In February 2009, the engineers and scientists of NASA were wrestling with a grave, potentially life-or-death decision, whether to green-light the launch of mission STS-119, the next flight of the Space Shuttle Discovery. Every launch of a NASA-manned spacecraft puts astronaut lives and millions of dollars of equipment on the line. Reputation, political capital, and scientific standing also ride on a successful launch, but catastrophe can undo them all. For every mission, NASA would like the maximum possible certainty, but there are project pressures against endless debate and analysis to unravel every possible concern. Operational schedules are tightly wound, and project milestones are critical. The issue here was whether STS-119 might have a faulty valve in the systems supplying fuel to the engines, integral to maintaining pressure in the all-important hydrogen tank. The previous mission, STS-126, had experienced such a problem, which had happily not affected the success of that flight. But NASA engineers do not bet on good luck, and the risk of possible disaster with this next mission was very real. The piece of equipment in question, no longer manufactured, could not be easily replaced, but it was buttressed by some system redundancy with other valves. Should STS-119 be launched? Could the Flight Readiness Review Team get the right go or no decision with the appropriate level of confidence? Looming over these critical questions was the history of NASA itself, some 50 years of pioneering scientific triumphs, punctuated by a few but heartbreaking accidents, where an occasional bad decision led to historic tragedy. How to be sure that this decision didn't become another tragedy? The real story of the launch of STS-119 is not about what finally happened, but about the power of how NASA personnel finally decided what to do, a process of disciplined and iterative decision-making, buttressed by a strong but pragmatic culture of inquiry, things NASA developed in the morning after clarity and learning following some historic and very public errors in judgment. Learning from history. As the whole world knows, the first of those errors in judgment resulted in the fireball in the sky on January 28, 1986, when the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded in its second minute of flight, killing its entire crew. Despite concerns that cold weather could reduce the effectiveness of the O-ring pressure seals at the joints of the Space Shuttle's solid rocket motors, NASA managers had approved the launch of Challenger on that day, when the temperature at the Kennedy Space Center was barely above freezing. The spacecraft was destroyed as the failure of an O-ring to seal its joint allowed a jet of hot flame to escape and breach the shuttle's external fuel tank, causing a fatal ignition of the liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen it contained. Like every shuttle launch, the January 1986 mission was preceded by a Flight Readiness Review, an FRR in NASA acronym speak, whose purpose was to evaluate issues that might threaten mission success and to withhold launch permission until those issues are resolved. 2 weeks earlier, an FRR had certified Challenger ready for flight. Of course, participants in that meeting could not foresee how cold it would be 2 weeks hence. The day before the launch, NASA personnel became concerned about the weather. The solid rocket motor manager at Marshall Space Flight Center asked Morton Thiokol, the manufacturer of those motors, to review their safety in cold weather. In a series of teleconferences that evening, Thiokol engineers initially recommended against a low-temperature launch. But after their view was challenged by NASA shuttle managers, an offline caucus among engineers and managers at Thiokol reversed that recommendation. Challenger lifted off the next morning and was destroyed 73 seconds later. The Presidential Commission set up to examine the Challenger disaster found that pressure to maintain the shuttle program's launch schedule led managers to minimize the seriousness of engineers' concerns about the O-rings. The perceived need for shuttle productivity certainly contributed to the error in judgment.